بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. Today's session we have another load of questions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make things easy and simple and successful. First question says, in Islam, is there a thing called abandonment, whereby a woman leaves her husband's home and stays away and refuses to return? She is automatically divorced after a certain period of time, question mark, or no matter the duration she is still married unless he pronounced talaq or she sought the khula. We say first and foremost is that whenever there are marital problems or disagreements, then they should, the husband and the wife, they should try to iron out the kinks. They should try to work out the problems, bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they can do it by themselves, with conversation, with understanding, someone has to apologize, if someone has to swallow his or her pride, or whatever they can do to reconcile and to stop the fighting, quote unquote, and to fix the problem and get to the core root of the issue why the husband is displeased or the wife is displeased or angry or whatever the case may be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the Quran, وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ. He says to reconcile, it is best. It's best to make peace. It's best to come together, to lay down your weapon and to make peace, if it's possible. Bidnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of the time we know that it is impossible. Sometimes it's best for the two people to separate. And Allah clearly tells us about this in the glorious Quran. Allah says, وَإِنْ يَتَفَرَّقَ يُغْنِ اللَّهُ كُلًّا مِنْ سَعَتِهِ. Allah says what is translated to mean, and if they split up, the husband and the wife, Allah will give both of them better. So therefore, sometimes it's best for them to split up. Sometimes there's no harmony. Sometimes there's no peace. Sometimes the marriage is nothing but a means of misery and suffering for both parties or for one of the parties. And as we explained briefly, that this is one of the times in which divorce could be recommended. It could be recommended, and which is nothing but harm. There's no point in the marriage staying alive. Move on, go your separate ways. It all depends. There's no one-size-fits-all situation. So before we even get into the question, I think that if there's a problem that the wife has, or a reason why she wants to leave the home, or why she's not pleased with her husband, then the husband should be at least willing to listen to what she has to say. He should be prepared to listen to her grievances that she has with him. Okay, what is the problem? What is she displeased? What is the matter? And if it's something that is valid, if it's something that is based off of reality, then the husband should try his best to fix those problems and to correct those errors. Furthermore, the wife should be willing to accept the willingness of the husband. And this is a very common problem. There are women who are unpleased or displeased in their marriages. They have this problem, they have that problem, they have this major shortcoming or flaw that they find in their husbands. And when it's brought to the husband's attention, and the husband or the husbands, they try to fix it and try to work on it, a lot of times the women are not willing. And vice versa too, even with women. And this is a big problem. Rather, the husband and the wife should be willing, as long as the other partner is willing. Bidnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah knows best. So therefore, for a woman to leave the home, to run away from her husband's home, unless she's being abused, unless she's being totally, degraded and treated in a total, inhumane manner, if he's just oppressing her and treating her like an animal on the street, something like this, something that's really outlandish, if that's not the case, then it's impermissible for her to leave her home. And her leaving her home, and her husband is angry with her and displeased with her, then the Prophet ﷺ has explained to us in the authentic hadith that the angels will curse her. And Allah Azza wa Jalla will be angry at her. So therefore, if there's no reason for her to leave the home and run away, then it is haram, and it is a means of a major sin, whereas she's displeasing and angering her husband. As for if the husband, waliyadhu billah, is putting his hands on her, if the husband is doing something really vile and wicked and foul, something that's totally against the kitab and the sunnah, and she has to leave out of fear of major physical harm or a major problem in her deen, then that's one thing. But if that isn't the case, then she is not allowed to leave her home. Tight. Let's get to the question now. If she does leave the home, quote unquote, she runs away, she disappears on her husband, is there a specific amount of time in which she becomes divorced or whatever the case may be? We say that, first and foremost, Try to get her to come back. Speak to her, talk to her father or her wali, her guardian, someone that you know, someone that has contact with her, and see what's the problem, as we previously mentioned. If she refuses to come back home, and she does not want to come back home, then the simple solution is that you pronounce the divorce on her. Khalas. She doesn't want to return home. She pronounce the divorce, and that's it. The moment you pronounce the divorce, she's outside of the home. She spends her iddah period wherever she is because she refuses to come back. You providing for her or doing things that's not upon you because she has left your home. It's that simple. Okay, as for a specific time period, if a woman is away from her husband without a valid explanation, then I don't know of any specific time period that I've come across the people of knowledge mentioning, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Once again, this is a general answer, whereas every situation, especially those that pertain to marriage and divorce, need a tailor-made size, tailor-made suit, not one size fits all. Someone has to sit down and listen to the sister, someone who's fair, someone who isn't biased, okay, someone that's going to actually listen to what she says, someone who's level-headed, who has some type of knowledge, some type of wisdom, and some type of Islamic experience and maturity. And listen to the husband and see what is the problem and investigate and try to bring peace. And if peace cannot be accomplished, then at least give her her rights or him his rights. Okay, that's the proper way of dealing with these type of issues. A lot of people, they make mistakes. A lot of imams of masjids, a lot of students of knowledge, da'is, or quote-unquote wannabe da'is and students of knowledge, whatever you want to call them, in the West, especially in America, they deal with these situations, and not only are they horribly they're totally not qualified for this stuff. Islamically, the amount of time that they've spent doing formal studies, what they've studied, their understanding and their command of ilm, not only is it very sad, but a lot of times these situations are dealt with in haste. A lot of times these situations are dealt with in just hearing one side of the story, hearing from one person, one party, one side. And may Allah protect us all. Sometimes the situation is dealt with based off of lust and desire for one reason or another. This person is my friend. This brother is my friend. This sister, I want her to get divorced so I can marry her myself, or whatever the case may be. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. So my advice is for imams of masjids, or students of knowledge, or da'is, whoever they are, whatever they are, is to understand this concept. And it's something, alhamdulillah, I've benefited from a few of my mashayikh here in Medina over the years. It was one situation specifically. It was Sheikh Salih al-Zubaydi, Hafidhullah. This was about maybe 4 years ago. I caught him about a situation, and he was giving me advice about dealing with these matters, and that you give a general answer when it comes to marriage and divorce. General. Okay, and it is improper for you to give a specific ruling, a specific judgment on something that you have not heard and sat down and investigated and looked into. Another one of my mashaykh, maybe 2 years ago, Sheikh Muqbil al-Rufai, Hafidhullah, he mentioned that giving a ruling or talking about a person's marriage or their divorce, he says it's like qada. It's like, okay, passing judgment. A judge has to hear from both sides. The judge has to be balanced, has to be level-headed, has to be knowledgeable and learned. And as Ibn al-Qayyim, may Allah have mercy upon him, mentioned that from the etiquettes of the qadi, from the etiquettes of the judge in Islam, he says, وَيَنْبَغِي أَنْ لَا يُحْسِنَ الظَّنَّ بِالنَّاسِ. Okay, my God. He says it's necessary for him to have bad thought of the people. In other words, the judge is not to be someone who's happy-go-lucky, who's naive, who thinks the best of everybody who comes to him. No. Rather, he is to be aware that people are going to lie, people will exaggerate, people will hide facts, and a lot of people, most people, are driven by their desires and their own personal motives. And as a wise man once said, motives are seldomly selfish. Not too often is a person's motive free from his own self. Very seldom. Okay, the human being by nature is a person who looks after himself first and foremost. Some people are more than others, okay? So therefore, this is a very important concept for the student of knowledge and for the imam, is to beware. As some people say, game. They say recognize game. Game recognizes game. In other words, you have to look through what people say. As for if you just take the surface of what people say, people will lie to you. Okay, people will deceive you. They'll try to trick you. They'll give you half of the story. And Allah knows best how many times we've seen situations like this. Allahu A'lam, how many times we've seen situations when the Imam or the student knowledge, he says something and later on the whole story comes out and he says, well, I didn't know. I didn't know that she was lying. I didn't know that the brother was lying. I didn't know that the brother had did this to her and he physically did that to her. I didn't know he was on drugs. I didn't know this and that. Ya akhi, why didn't you ask? What stopped you from asking? What stopped you from investigating? I just did what I could. La. And this rule here, brothers and sisters, it applies to everyone on all levels, whether he's a student of knowledge, whether he's a sheikh, or quote unquote sheikh, whoever they may be. That it is necessary for you to listen to both sides. It is necessary for you to investigate and to look through the surface, scratch beneath the surface, as they say. Okay, some people say, well, you can't blame the sheikh. The sheikh didn't know that. He just answers a question. You can't lie. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because no one forces him to answer a question. No one forces you, the Imam of the Masjid, to answer that question. No one forced you to grant the woman the khula. No one forced you. It wasn't an emergency. It could have waited. She wasn't dying. So this is very important. And I remember years ago when I was, this was I think maybe my first year of the College of Hadith. I was in America in a masjid. I won't mention the masjid's name. And an Imam of a masjid, a sister came to him. Whether that's a different story. This is another story now. He wasn't even the Imam of the masjid. He was the quote-unquote the wali of the masjid, in charge of the women of the masjid. A sister came to him, complaining about her husband. He's a criminal. He does this, he does that, so on and so forth. The wali of the women, quote-unquote, he instantly says your marriage is null and void, khalas. And he divorced her. You were outside of the masjid, just like that. He says, oh, that's sufficient. You're no longer married to this man. So the brother came to the masjid later on and said, what have you done? What do you mean? And the brother couldn't explain himself. So this is something that's very dangerous, very serious. We don't want to drag out, make a lecture on this, but this is something that needs to be stopped. And then if you're not qualified, then you shouldn't speak. If you are qualified, then you should think before you speak. You should think before you move. And do not move before you think. But do not think later on after you've moved. Because some moves can be detrimental to a person's household, a person's community, and Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best. Next question says, do you know anything concerning the legality of a Muslim woman becoming a makeup artist as a profession? Like the women who do makeup for women in the shopping malls or at MAC, MAC or whatever. We say that adornment in Islam is permissible. As Allah Azza wa Jal has said in the Quran, قُلْ مَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةَ اللَّهِ. Who is the one who has made Allah's beauty, Allah's adornment haram? So therefore it is permissible for men and women to adorn themselves and to beautify themselves. Allah has told us in the exact same chapter, chapter 7, Surah Al-A'raf, that Allah has sent down, He says, He sent upon you clothing, warisha. He sent upon you adornment and clothing upon you. In other words, from the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jalla is that He gave us clothes to wear. And from Allah's blessings is He allows us to adorn ourselves with these clothes. Not only do we cover our private areas and practice shyness and humility, but it's also a means of adornment. This nice hat that you wear, this nice shirt that you wear, this nice garment that you wear, so on and so forth. This is a ni'mah of Allah Azza wa Jalla. The Prophet ﷺ has told us in the authentic narration that Allah is beautiful and Allah loves beauty. So therefore, the rule of thumb is that a believer is allowed to adorn him or herself however he or she wills. However, it is impermissible for you to adorn yourself or to adorn someone with that which goes against the kitab and the sunnah. Something that goes against what Allah and His Messenger have said, then now you're no longer allowed to practice this zina. Okay, this beautification process now becomes impermissible, and that is a means of uglification. Okay, because it's going against Allah Azza wa Jalla's commands and the commands of His Messenger. Okay, so therefore a woman, she can do what she wants with herself, with her sisters, with her friends, her customers, and her clientels, as long as it's not against the kitab and the sunnah, such as a woman extending her hair. As the Prophet ﷺ has told us, which was narrated by Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu in the authentic hadith. لَعْنَ اللَّهُ الْوَاصِلَةَ وَالْمُسْتَوْصِلَةَ. That Allah curses the woman who extends hair and the woman who receives the extension. Okay? Also, for a woman to sharpen her teeth, or to separate her teeth, or to try to make her neck longer, and things like this. Okay? The Prophet also said, لَعْنَ اللَّهُ, he says, وَالنَّامِسَةَ وَالْمُتَنَامِسَةَ. He says, and the woman who shaves and trims her eyebrows, and the woman who does it for another woman. So this is impermissible. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu, he told us in the authentic hadith, when the father of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu accepted Islam, okay, on the day of the conquest of Mecca, as Jabir ibn Abdullah narrated in the hadith is in Sahih Muslim, he says his father came, وَرَأْسُهُ, he says, and his head was white like a hyssop plant. Okay, he says, غَيِّرُ هَذَا وَجَنِّبُهُ السَّوَادِ. He says, change the color of his hair, but do not dye his hair black. Do not dye his hair black. Also, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said that towards the end of time, there will come a people who dye their heads black like the chest of doves and pigeons. He says, they will not smell the fragrance of paradise. This hadith is collected by Imam Abu Dawood in his Sunan, and is an authentic hadith. Also, you can find it in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So therefore, the hadith clearly proves that dyeing one's hair black is a major sin. An-Nawawi, may Allah have mercy upon him, he explained in Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhadhab that this ruling applies to men and to women. So therefore, putting in fake hair or anything we say that is a means of extending hair. We don't want to go too far off the topic with regards to, can a woman put yarn in her hair, or can a woman put human hair in her hair, or horse hair? Is a woman allowed to extend her hair as long as the people know that it isn't her real hair, and things like this? We stick with the hadith. The hadith clearly said extension. Okay, that's a different issue right there. Okay, what different scholars say, but we're sticking with the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is not to extend the hair. Okay, similarly with regards to dyeing the hair black. Some scholars said it's permissible for a woman to do it if she's married, and if she wishes to dye her hair for her husband's pleasure. But we say that the Prophet ﷺ said no. Okay, we'll start with the Sunnah of Muhammad ﷺ, for indeed that's more than sufficient. So therefore, these are some examples of things that are permissible with regards to beautification. Okay, this is with the specific scope or angle of being a hairdresser or a makeup artist. Okay, as for the general rulings of a woman working, then if the woman has to come out of her hijab or expose her beauty and her charms to men that are not her mahrams, or to dress indecently in front of women, other women, whether they're Muslim, let alone non-Muslim women, because that's a long issue in itself. What is a woman allowed to see from another woman? What is a Muslim woman allowed to dress like in front of non-Muslim women? That's a different issue. But the point is that there's a general Islamic guidelines. If she's mixing with men, she's exposing herself to men and things that are impermissible and haram and disliked, then the job becomes haram. But the basic rule is that if a woman can keep her Islamic identity, her Islamic chastity and bashfulness and so on and so forth, and she's not doing haram things, then there's nothing that makes being a makeup artist impermissible. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. Next question says, Assalamu alaikum, hope everything's good, going well with you and your family. Just had a question on Islamic finance. Interest-based and speculative investment are not allowed in Islam. We know the most of these called Islamic banks are really riba-based lenders disguised as halal. Then the question that he gives about 2 or 3 paragraphs with regards to these financial issues. He then says, well, my question is, he talks about these companies that deal with investment. He says, it's a very long question, and as a note, to our brother for Allah's cause and for any brother and sister asking question, is that sometimes the details are a must, and sometimes the details you can summarize them. Okay, but there's a specific way and etiquette of asking a question, which will be explained in another class, hopefully within Azza wa Jalla. The question, he says, and I also know that for a bond to lending to be halal, it needs to be interest-free and share risk with the borrower. I don't know, Akhi, whether you're asking the question or whether you're telling the answer. Wallahi. He says, so my question, is this alternative investment plan halal? Also, would you know some English material where I can read up on this? Jazakallah khairan for your answer. Okay, he says, so this avoids interest and forces me as the lender to take risk with the company while making sure that I do gain from this transaction and the company succeeds. This also benefits the company. We say in brief, because the question is not 100% clear, whereas it's a long layout. We say in brief what is that Allah Azza wa Jalla, as He has told us in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْءَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. Allah has made bay' permissible. Allah has made buying and selling lawful. Allah has made bartering, trading, transactions permissible, and He's made riba haram. There's a hadith that is narrated, in which is difference of opinion among the scholars of hadith, how authentic it is, collected by Imam Abu Dawud and others, narrated by Thawban, radiallahu anhu, that the Messenger of Allah was asked, Ayyul kasbi atyab. He says, what is the best way for a man to make a living, for someone to earn a living? He says, Amalu rajuli biyadihi wa kullu bay'in mabrurin. He says, what a man does with his hands, and every lawful, blessed means of transaction. There are many authentic hadith with regards to the permissibility of buying and selling in Al-Bukhari and in Muslim and in others. So many different hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ made impermissible this type of transaction, that type of transaction. In other words, that which isn't mulabasa or munabada or bay' or gharar or jahala, those types of impermissible transactions, then it is what? Lawful. And it is also highly recommended for a person to seek Allah's rizq, as He has told us in the Quran, فَابْتَغُوا إِنَّ اللَّهِ الرِّزْقِ. Seek Allah's sustenance. Okay? So therefore, buying and selling, lending someone money, borrowing money, making an investment, if it does not include usury, if it doesn't include a major risky, dodgy transaction, yani jahala or gharar, if it is not taking someone's wealth unlawfully, and if it doesn't involve buying and selling something that you can't produce, buying and selling something that you don't own, and things like this, the impermissible types of transactions in Islam, if it doesn't involve none of this, then it is permissible. And a person is allowed to make any stipulation, any condition, or prerequisite, any do's or don'ts, as long as it doesn't go against Kitab and Sunnah. You have to pay at the beginning of the month. You have to pay such and such if you're late. Like this, like that. We give you this % back. La bas. As long as it is not what we've just mentioned. As long as it doesn't involve usury, riba, then it's permissible. As long as it's not a means of them taking your money, or you're oppressing people and ripping people off, dealing, selling the flesh of swine, alcohol, idols, crosses, impermissible things like this, okay? As long as it doesn't fall under impermissible things, then it goes back to the rule of thumb that وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْءَ. Allah has made buying and selling lawful. So therefore, investing in a company, lending them money, getting money from them, as long as it doesn't involve those things, then it is permissible. However, the whole concept of modern banking, the whole concept of a bank, the whole concept of these different companies and the different investment programs, surely I'm not an economist, okay? I do not specialize in economy and finance, not in the Western world, nor in the Islamic sense. That's not my field of expertise. However, these are the general rules and the fundamental principles. Okay, so therefore, according to what you mentioned, if you invest and they give you that money back and they avoid interest and there's a benefit for you, then it's permissible based off of those guidelines. Clear, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hopefully, we'll have time to do some more classes on buying and selling. Rather, a couple years ago in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, we did a series of lectures on buying and selling in Islam. I believe you can find the videos on YouTube, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hopefully we can do more classes and shed some more light on this issue, because it is extremely important. Extremely important. And as he mentioned himself with regards to these Islamic banks or Muslim banks or whatever the case may be, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. As for places to read up on this in English, then there are tons of articles, academic journals and things like this, from the books that I've come across that are relatively extensive and seem to be pretty thorough and solid research. This book here, it says, I don't know how good you can see that with the camera. It says Critical Issues on Islamic Banking and Financial Markets, Islamic Economics, Banking and Finance, Investments, Takaful and Financial Planning by Saiful Azhar Razli. Okay, the book here is about 600 pages, so it's pretty extensive. I have not felt the time to read the entire book more than once from cover to cover, but from my reading of the book and looking into the book was pretty thorough and pretty good. And once again, so no one will misunderstand, I do not know the author, and I'm not saying that everything in the book is that I agree with, but from what I've seen, the book is pretty good. And it's from the most extensive sources in English that I've come across in my limited, small amount of reading. Okay? So, therefore, if you can get your hands on this book, it would be a good idea, especially if you deal with finances and economics in America. That would be best for you. As I said, there are many other journals, many other websites, but a little advice. A lot of times people they want specific books on topics or specific lectures on topics on things like this, and a lot of times before you can understand modern Islamic finances and banking and economics, you must have a thorough basic understanding of the fundamentals of the Islamic buying and selling. Okay, what is permissible to buy, what is impermissible to buy, what is permissible to sell, what is impermissible to sell, what are the rulings of lending, what is the rulings of giving a gift, accepting a gift? What is the rulings on investing? What are the types of investing in Islam? Once you have a basic, thorough understanding of the Islamic principles, then you move on to the modern day issues. Then you move on to the books in English and so on and so on and so forth. So that would be my advice. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Surely this is a major issue, a big problem and a calamity in the world today. And we don't want to go too far off about this theory and that theory, banking and debt and so on and so forth. But it is a problem. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help the Muslims. Ameen. The next question says, Assalamu alaikum. The brother or sister who wants to perform Hajj, they were told they can't perform Hajj until all their bills are paid, meaning bills, gas, electric, water, etc., mortgage, per se, loans, IRS, government. We say, Allah has told us in the Quran al-Kareem, chapter 3, Surah Al Imran, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. Allah says, and upon mankind is a duty to Allah to perform the pilgrimage. And this is only with regards to those who have the ability to do so. So therefore, the Quran al-Kareem tells us that it is an obligation that it is upon men and women, to make Hajj. And that obligation is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the stipulation that they have the istita'ah, they have the ability, the capability to do and to make that Hajj. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu he has told us in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar in Bukhari and Muslim, he says, Bunin Islam ala khams. Islam is based on 5 things. And from those 5 things he mentioned, he says, wa hajjil bayti. He says, is to make the pilgrimage. To make the pilgrimage. And it clearly states in the authentic hadith that the pilgrimage is upon those who have the ability. So therefore, what's meant by having the ability for men is, firstly, they must have the financial means, the physical health and capability, stamina, and they must have the rahila. They must have a means of transport to and from their homes. As for women, then they have the same conditions, or with an extra condition being the mahram. A woman is not held responsible for making Hajj unless she has a mahram, someone that can accompany her on that journey. So therefore, what's meant by the financial means is that you can pay for your ticket in these modern days, your visa, your hotel, if that's what's required from you. Anything with regards to your house to the airport, okay, Jeddah to Medina, Mecca to Medina, Jeddah to Mecca, whatever the case may be, Mina, Arafah, Muzdalifah, okay, anything that you're going to need on your trip, then you must have it ahead of time. And if you don't have it, then the Hajj is not obligatory upon you. And also, you must have that which will suffice you back home. You can't make Hajj if your wife doesn't have no food to eat, if your children are starving, if they don't have basic needs, if your little babies don't have Pampers and baby wipes. Hajj is not obligatory upon you. So therefore, your basic bills have to be covered. However, it depends on your financial situation. If you, for example, you pay your bills at the end of the month or the beginning of the month, whatever case may be, you make Hajj, you come back in 2 weeks, then you pay your bills, you go back to work. That's fine. That's fine. It's not a condition that every single bill be totally flattened out before you leave. Because there are different types of debts in Islam, and there are different types of financial obligation and responsibilities in Islam. We have dayn hal. There's something that which is called an immediate debt, in which the person is seeking the one who loaned you the money. He's seeking, give me my money right now. That's one thing. You can't make hajj with that type of debt. As for you have a debt, you have 3 years to pay off, or 5 years to pay off, or the brother says, give me the money whenever you got it, la bas. Or you pay a bill every other month, or whatever the case may be, la bas. You pay three months ahead of time, la bas. That's fine. Okay? So a person cannot go extreme in this concept, in which every single thing you have to have a full tank of gas and la. Rather, make sure that your immediate responsibilities are taken care of, and whoever you're leaving behind, they will have that which will suffice them until you get back with Allah Azza wa Jalla. And whatever sacrifice you make for Allah Azza wa Jalla, it will not be wasted, as Allah tells us in His glorious book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Next question says, sidebar. He says the Hajj is wajib when you have the means to go, right? If you have the money to go and you'll never go because of debt, the person, we just explained that. Question says, the brother and sister are intended, can they travel to different places? Meaning also, A, with a third person, in parentheses, not wali. B, does it have to be the wali with them? Barakallahu fikum. We say, wa fikum barakallah. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam has told us in the authentic hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah, narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar, and other from the companions in the Sahih, that a woman who believes in Allah on the last day is not allowed to travel without a mahram. Some narrations say 3 nights. Some say 2 nights. Some say 1 night. Some say a day and a night. The different versions of this hadith. Okay? A woman is not allowed to travel without a mahram. The woman that she's intending to marry is not her mahram. He's not her mahram. Rather, he is intending to marry her. So before we can totally understand this issue, what is a mahram? What is a mahram? A mahram is someone that is unlawful to marry that woman eternally. He can never marry that woman. Never. There's never a time in which she becomes lawful for him to marry. Okay? And with this understanding of the term mahram, as Al-Hafidh bin Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala explained in Fath al-Bari and others before him, we understand that your brother-in-law is not your mahram sister. Okay? Or the opposite, akhi. If you're married to a woman and she has a sister, you're not a mahram for that woman. Because if you divorce your wife, you can marry the sister, and vice versa. A mahram is somebody that you can never marry. Okay? So therefore, you cannot travel with her. You cannot be with her, whereas she is lawful to you. Rather, if you like her and you're interested in her and vice versa, it's a danger. And the shaitan may come and fool both of you and play with both of you and get you to do something that will be impermissible and that you will regret dearly or bitterly. So therefore, if the mahram, if he's with you guys, then that's one thing. The father, the wali is there, la bas. As for you traveling, no way. Because that's going to be a means of fitna. And as Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu narrated and others, la yakhluwan rajulun, he says, no man will ever seclude himself with a woman, illa kana shaytanu thalithahuma. He says, except that the devil will be their third guest. So therefore, being alone with a woman you're not a mahram for is impermissible and is a means of destruction. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The last question, or no, not the last question, but from the last questions we have in this session, says here, is there anything from the authentic sunnah with regards to the obligation of switching the place which you pray after you offer the prayer, getting up and moving to a different place to make salah? We say that the people of knowledge explain that some of the people of knowledge of the past say that it is recommended that when a man or woman offers prayer or voluntary prayer, to get up and to move to a different place and to pray in a different place, no matter how close by it may be than the original vicinity in which you offered the prayer the first time. And that is because there'll be another part of Allah's earth that will bear witness for you on the Day of Judgment. So therefore, some of the people now say it's a good thing to do. As for a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that it's mandatory and obligatory, no, it's not obligatory. And according to those scholars who say that it's recommended, that's their view. But if we don't have nothing specifically from Muhammad ﷺ, then we cannot make the legislation. The last question of this session comes from an audio of a brother who's asking, he says that, if my memory serves me correctly, that there's a brother who's married to a sister, and the sister comes from a family that are Sufis. And his father-in-law told him that during the first 10 days of Muharram, you're not allowed to do things. That's what he said in the question. And he mentioned examples such as take a shower. And he didn't specify what things are impermissible, but he said taking a shower and things like this. Is this permissible? Is there any proof for this? We say first and foremost, I don't know what the questioner intended by things. However, due to the fact that he mentioned taking a shower, and due to the fact that the brother is married to his daughter, perhaps he was talking about sexual intercourse. Perhaps, perhaps that's what seems apparent to me, is that he was talking about that a man cannot be intimate with his wife, consequently take a ghusl during the first 10 days of the month of Muharram, because the month of Muharram is so special. We say there lies no doubt that the month of Muharram is a sacred month. It's from the Ashur al-Hurum, the months in which fighting is not allowed. It's called the Shahrullah, the month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as the Prophet ﷺ explained to us in the authentic narration, is that the best fast to make after the month of Ramadan is the fast of Allah's month of Al-Muharram. Also, the expiation of an entire year of sin with regards to fasting the day of Ashura. And what the Prophet ﷺ said when he came to Medina and he found that the Jews of Medina were fasting this day. He asked him why, and he said it was the day in which Allah delivered the Israelites from Pharaoh and from his oppression and from his tyranny. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Ana ahaqqu bi Musa minkum. He says, I have more of a right to Moses than you guys do. I'm closer to him than you are. And this is because Muhammad ﷺ followed Musa's message. The Jews of Medina and any other person that disbelieved in Muhammad ﷺ, you really didn't follow what Moses told you to follow. He says, so I'm closer to Moses than you guys are. And then he told the people to fast that day. And it's mentioned that he says, if I go to the next year, if I live next year, I will fast the 9th day. But we're not talking about the fiqh of the fasting of the day of Ashura, the 10th of Muharram. What's important here is that Muharram is a special month, a virtuous month. However, to say that you cannot do things, take a shower, Allah Alam, what he intended, you can't be with your wife, Allahu Alam, to say that, there lies no doubt that that's false, and that is baseless, and that is bogus. Rather, in the month of Ramadan, the month in which you must fast, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمَ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ, Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, whoever is present from you when the hilal, when the crescent moon is spited, then he must fast. Fasting in the month of Ramadan is obligatory. As the Prophet ﷺ said when he was asked about Islam, he says, to fast the month of Ramadan. He told Jibreel, alayhi salam. So wajib, that which is wajib is the month of Ramadan. So if a man is allowed to take a shower, to go to sleep at nighttime, to be intimate with his wife at nighttime, whatever the case may be, in the month of Ramadan, then what do you think is the case of the month of Muharram? Doesn't make any sense. The obligatory fasting, a man can be with his wife at nighttime. A man can take a shower, a woman can take a shower when it's wajib at night or in the morning before Fajr comes in, let alone voluntary fasting. So that's bogus. However, my advice, Akhil Kareem, will be to explain to your father-in-law and to your wife first and foremost, and to your family members, to explain to them what Islam is. What is Islam? Because if you don't explain to them what Islam is and clear up their misconceptions and their poor understandings of what they think Islam is because of their Sufism and things like this, then you're going to be putting a bandage on a broken arm. The bone is broke, shattered. A band-aid is not going to help for sure. Okay, you have to get to the basis of Islam. And not to make a lecture out of this, but many people, they make a mistake with this. When they talk to a person, let's say for example the person is a Sufi, and there are different levels of Sufis. Some Sufis are worse than others. Some Sufis are way out there in left field. And there are some Sufis that are on first base. There's some Sufis that are between first and second. There's different levels of innovation. There's different levels of misguidance. Okay? They're not on the same level. No matter what level they're on, just like any other group that has taken a way of understanding Islam other than the Kitab and the Sunnah, and other than the consensus, the ijma', then you have to explain to them what is Islam. And what are the sources of Islam. Most people, whatever, and we spoke about this before in New York City, I believe last summer. Most people, when they talk to a group that are Sufis, the first thing they talk about or think about is what? They talk about dhikr. And this is an innovation to make this dhikr. It's an innovation to sing. It's haram to sing and to dance and to spin around praising Allah, and so on and so forth. And there's no doubt that it is clear misguidance. There's no doubt about that. and the one who has doubt or who differs to spin around
and to sing and to dance and to clap and to skip and to jump and to shake your leg praising Allah. The one who differs that that's misguidance, then he is as if he has no intellect whatsoever. As if he has no intellect whatsoever. Okay? There's no doubt about that. That's clear as day. That's not the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ didn't sing and dance. He didn't spin around and jump around praising Allah. That's not what he did. He says, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray as you see me praying. And they never narrated in an authentic hadith or a weak fabricated hadith that the Prophet ﷺ praised Allah and spun around. When Allah Azza wa Jalla said down a verse, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. When that verse was sent down towards the end of his life, Aisha radiallahu anha, she narrated that the Prophet ﷺ would supplicate in his ruku', and he would make tasbih of Allah Azza wa Jalla and ask Allah to forgive him of his sins and declare his praise. And she said, he says what? يَتَأَوَّلُ الْقُرْآنِ. He was interpreting the Quran. In other words, that command in that verse right there, that surah, he implemented it and he interpreted it and he put it into physical practice in the ruku'. So if that's the tasbih of Allah, why didn't Aisha say that he spun around and he sang and he danced and he did this skip and this jump and what is this? So therefore, most people, this is what they think about. And this is wrong. This is inaccuracy trying to fix another inaccuracy. That's not what you have to say. You have to go to the core issue. You have to fix the broken bone. And the broken bone of these people is that they have sources for legislation other than the Kitab and the Sunnah. That which we call masadir al-talaqi. They have sources other than our sources. In other words, to them, what a sheikh sees in his dream is a source of legislation, or kashf, or dhawq, or vision, or seclusion leads to this taste and to this intuition and this type of thought. And they say, now we can make rules, and this is now permissible, and this is recommended. La abadan. Abadan. What you see in a dream, under any circumstance, is legislation. Abadan. Rather, when Abdullah ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu, when he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he told him that he saw a dream, and in the dream he did what? He had a horn, okay, and he was calling to the prayer, and the man came to him. He says, "What are you doing with that instrument?" He says, "I'm calling to the prayer." He says, "Ala adulluka." He says, "Shall I show you something that's better than what you're doing?" And he taught him the adhan. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, to the end of the adhan. The next morning, he went to the Prophet ﷺ. He told him what he saw. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? In Hadith in Bukhari, what did he say? He says, "Innaha la ru'ya haq, inshaAllah." He says, it is a true dream. It is a true dream. In other words, he confirmed what he saw. And if he didn't say that, then it wouldn't have been a true dream. So a dream is not a source of legislation, except for the Prophet's dream, alayhi salatu wasalam. As he told us in the authentic narrations, that having that dream is a part of prophecy. So therefore, the Prophet ﷺ, what he saw in his dreams was true, unconditionally true. What a person sees in his dreams, even the companions, is not a source of legislation, let alone a sheikh or a wali or whoever the case may be, whatever you title or name you want to give him. So the point that we're trying to get to is that if they have sources of legislation, this is now permissible because he saw it in his dream. This is now haram to be with your wife in the day of the 10 days of Muharram because the wali, he had a vision based off of 9 years of seclusion or whatever the case may be. If they have places where they're taking legislation from other than Kitab and Sunnah, what you say means nothing. Okay? Because you're putting a band-aid on a broken arm. That's haram, that's bogus. You can't say that. But he has something else that he's practicing and something else that they're doing. They don't understand the concept of Tawheed. Allah being unique from his creation. And the list goes on. And the list goes on. So the point that we're trying to get to, the advice for the students of knowledge and for the brothers, is that to go back to the core. Go back to the main, the mahal al-khilaf, the fork in the road. Start off. Of course, those people, inshallah, they love Allah. They love His Messenger. They love Islam. So you walk with them. Take the hands and walk them step by step by step by step by step. قُلْ إِن كُنتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِ. If you love Allah, then follow Me, Muhammad sallallahu, not the sheikh, not the wali, not the mullah, not this mufti and this person and this murid and that, la abadan, the person of the tariqah, Muhammad sallallahu. And then once you get to the fork in the road, bidnillah azza wa jal, with the proper proofs and evidences and the wisdom and the gentleness, bidnillah azza wa jal, and if you have to debate and fight and argue with some of them, that's what you have to do. Then hopefully you move on to the next step. But if you just start off at the fork of the road, oh, that's haram, you can't say that. Okay, they stop doing that, but then they have 10 other practices that are bogus. So, yani, this cannot be explained in detail, in words, in this little session right here. But this is very important and very dangerous. And you have to go back to the Masadir al-Talaqi. What are our sources? Kitab, Sunnah. That's it, no third. The consensus is consensus upon what? What's in the Kitab and Sunnah. Understanding the pious predecessors is understanding of what? Is the understanding of the Kitab and the Sunnah. The implementation, the practice of the Kitab and the Sunnah. Qiyas is based off of, making an analogy is based off what? Kitab and Sunnah. So those are the sources of legislation. And what a sheikh or what a mawla or a mufti says, these are not sources of legislation. Okay, also weak hadith, fabricated hadith, bogus narrations, these are not sources of legislation. This cannot be explained right now in this short session. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Hopefully we can speak about it at another time. What I've said that is true and correct is only from Allah Azza wa Jall's grace. And if I said anything that is incorrect, then it's only from my ignorance. And Allah Azza wa Jalla is the messenger are free from it. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Until the next session. If there are any other questions or requests that you have, don't feel free to send them. Bidnillahi Azza wa Jalla. Allah knows best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ila liqa.